My wife hid $1 million secret from me for our entire marriage. I only found out when the FBI showed up at my door, and the truth was more twisted than I could have ever imagined. The chime of the doorbell was an alien sound in the quiet of my Tuesday afternoon. I was deep in a zone, my fingers flying across the keyboard, describing the peculiar mating ritual of a newly discovered species of bioluminescent squid. The report was due yesterday, but the deep sea doesn't adhere to human deadlines, and I often found myself playing catch-up. I pushed back from my desk, the old wooden chair groaning in protest, and patted the front door, expecting a delivery driver or a lost neighbor. Instead, I found two men who looked like they'd been carved from granite and dressed by a J.C. Penney catalog. They were impeccably bland, from their short, conservative haircuts to their polished, but not too shiny, shoes. The taller one, who had the weary eyes of a man who'd seen too many lies, flashed a leather wallet open. A gold badge gleamed. "Mark Walsh?" he asked, his voice a low, even baritone. It wasn't really a question. "Yes? Can I help you?" I replied, my mind still half filled with images of glowing squid in the abyssal dark. "I'm Special Agent Collingsworth. This is Special Agent Miller. We're with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your wife, Jennifer Walsh, and her associate, Sean Miller." The world didn't slow down. It didn't shatter into a million pieces. It simply tilted. The familiar hallway of my own home felt suddenly foreign. The framed photos of Jenny and me on our wedding day, smiling on a sun-drenched beach, now seemed like artifacts from a museum of a lost civilization. The FBI. The words echoed in the silent, hollow space where my comprehension used to be. Sure. Please come in." I managed, stepping aside. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. They followed me into the living room, their presence making the space feel small and claustrophobic. They sat on our beige sofa, a piece of furniture Jenny had picked out after months of deliberation. I sat opposite them in my well-worn armchair, feeling like a suspect in my own life. "What is this about?" I asked, my throat dry. Agent Collingsworth took the lead. "We're investigating the business practices of Sean Miller and his firm, Millennial Wealth Management. We have reason to believe your wife is involved." A nervous, disbelieving laugh escaped me. "Involved? Involved how?" "Sean is her friend, her childhood best friend. She's a veterinarian, for God's sake. She gives dogs their shots and deworms kittens." Agent Miller, the quieter of the two, spoke for the first time. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Mr. Walsh, what can you tell us about your joint finances?" I shrugged, a gesture that felt hopelessly inadequate. "Jenny handles most of it. She's always been better with numbers. I handle the mortgage and the utilities from my account. She takes care of the credit cards, the investments, everything else." "And have you noticed any large, unexplained deposits or withdrawals? Any significant lifestyle changes in the last, say, 5 to 6 years?" My mind raced, scrambling over the landscape of our shared life. The new car she bought herself for her birthday last year. The sudden, extravagant girls' trip to Vegas she'd taken with a few friends in the clinic. The expensive handbag she'd shown off, claiming she'd found it at a consignment store. The kitchen renovation she'd insisted on, paid for in cash from what she called her vet school slush fund. "No," I said, the lie tasting like ash on my tongue. "Nothing unusual. Does the name Ethon Holdings mean anything to you?" Collingsworth pressed. I shook my head. "No. Should it?" They exchanged a look, a silent communication that excluded me entirely. They asked a few more perfunctory questions, clearly realizing I was a dead end, a useful idiot in his own home. They handed me a card, told me to call if I thought of anything, and left as abruptly as they had arrived. I stood in the silent living room for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. The trust one had in my wife, the foundation upon which I built my entire adult life, had just been dynamited, and I was standing in the rubble, completely and utterly lost. When Jenny came home that evening, she was humming, carrying a bag of groceries. "Hey, you, I got that weird seaweed cracker thing you like," she called out, her voice bright and normal. It was a sound from a different universe. I was still sitting in the armchair in the dark. I hadn't moved. "Mark, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, flipping the light switch. The sudden illumination made me flinch. She saw my face, and her smile faltered. "Honey, what's wrong? Did something happen with the squid report?" "The FBI was here today," I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. The bag of groceries slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. A carton of eggs cracked open, yellow yolk oozing onto the hardwood. She didn't seem to notice. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a marble statue. "What?" she whispered. "They were asking about you. And Sean. About Millennial Wealth Management." I stood up, the movement stiff. "They asked me about Ethon Holdings. They asked me about our finances, Jenny. Our finances that you handle." She started to cry, but they weren't the soft, vulnerable tears I was used to. These were frantic, panicked tears. "Mark, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Jenny?" I asked, my voice rising for the first time. "What the hell is it?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like my wife is being investigated by the FBI for fraud. "It's Sean's business," she wailed, collapsing onto the sofa where the agents had sat hours before. He made some bad investments. He got in over his head. He just needed some time to sort out, to rebalance the portfolios. It's just a liquidity crisis." The term sounded hollow, rehearsed. A liquidity crisis? The FBI doesn't investigate liquidity crises, Jenny. They investigate crimes. And why were they asking about you? What did you do? It all came out then, in a torrent of sobs and self-justification. The story was both simpler and more complex than I had feared. It wasn't an affair. It was a conspiracy. Years ago, before we'd even met, Jenny had inherited a little over $1.2 million from a reclusive grandfather. It was her secret, her ticket to a life less ordinary. Instead of paying off her vet school debt or investing it wisely, she'd given almost all of it to Sean, her brilliant, ambitious best friend, to invest. And at first, the returns were magical. On paper, her wealth doubled, then tripled. Sean was a genius. He showed her statements, graphs climbing ever upward. He convinced her to become a silent partner. She used her fake profits to invest more. She became his biggest cheerleader, his most effective recruiter. She'd vouch for him at dinner parties, at the vet clinic, to our friends. "Oh, you have to talk to Sean. He's a miracle worker with money." She brought in dozens of clients, basking in the reflected glory of his success. The separate bank account, the one I thought was for her loans, was the conduit for these fake profits, which she then used to fund our life. The kitchen, the car, the handbags. Our entire marriage was being subsidized by a lie. "You knew?" I asked, the horror dawning on me. "You knew this whole time?" "Not at first," she pleaded, her eyes wide and desperate. "I swear, Mark, I thought he was a financial savant. And by the time I started to suspect, when the payments got a little delayed, when his excuses started, it was too late. I was in too deep. If I pulled out, it would all collapse. I'd lose everything. The people I brought in, they'd lose everything too. I did it for us, for our future. The audacity of that lie finally broke me. For U.S. I roared, making her jump. You build a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and you call a future? You lied to me every single day. You made me complicit in this crime. Our friends, Jenny, the Millers, the Davisons, they invested because of you. Their money is gone because of you. The fight that followed was destructive and ugly. She turned on me, her fear morphing into venomous anger. She accused me of being emotionally absent, of caring more about the pressure at the Mariana Trench than the pressure she was under. She said I was content with my mediocre salary and my boring life, that I never understood what it took to be truly successful. Sean gets it, she screamed, her face contorted. He understands ambition. He understands that you have to take big risks for a big life. What have you ever built, Mark? A report on worms. That was the kill shot. It was designed to eviscerate, and it worked. I looked at this woman, this stranger I'd shared a bed with for 6 years, and I felt nothing but a cold, hollow emptiness. I didn't sleep in the spare room that night. I packed a duffel bag with a few essentials, my laptop, and the unfinished squid report. I walked out of the house I thought was my home, got into my car, and drove to a generic, soulless hotel near the research facility. As I lay in the sterile darkness, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, I realized the FBI wasn't the worst of it. The real betrayal was the years of deceit, the conscious choice to build our life on a rotten core. The next morning, I called the most aggressive divorce lawyer I could find. When I called Jenny to tell her, she was hysterical. She alternated between begging and threatening. She said Sean had a plan, that he was going to secure new funding, that I was blowing up our lives over a simple misunderstanding. Her unwavering faith in him, even now, was the final, sickening proof. I was married to a woman who was a true believer in a con man, and I was just collateral damage. The following months were a special kind of hell. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Our assets were frozen. The local news picked up the story. Local vet entangled in multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme. My name was splashed across the headlines as the clueless husband. I lost friends. The Millers, who had invested their children's college fund because of Jenny's glowing recommendation, wouldn't even look at me. The Research Institute placed me on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. My professional reputation, built on years of meticulous work, was tarnished by association. I sold the house. The equity, what little was left after the banks and the lawyers took their cuts, was split. I moved into a small, furnished apartment that smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. Just when I thought the isolation was complete, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Mark, it's Laura. Laura Miller, Sean's wife. My first instinct was to hang up. What could she possibly want? To scream at me? To blame me for my wife's actions? Laura, I said, my voice guarded. What can I do for you? There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear her shaky breath. I know I have no right to ask this, but can we talk? I feel like I'm going crazy, and you're the only person who might understand what this is like. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet, out-of-the-way park, far from our old neighborhoods. She looked shattered. The vibrant, put-together woman I'd known was gone, replaced by someone with haunted eyes and a permanent slump in her shoulders. She was pushing a stroller with her youngest, who was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the world crumbling around him. We found an empty bench, the silence between us heavy and awkward. I'm so sorry, Laura, I said finally. It was inadequate, but it was all I had. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Don't. You have nothing to apologize for. I had no idea, Mark. None. He told me the business was doing well. He showed me fabricated tax returns. He had an office. For God's sake. A secretary. I thought we were living the dream. She told me her side of the collapse. The knocks on the door from process servers. The foreclosure notices on their home. The friends who had invested and now sent her vicious, hate-filled messages. She was filing for divorce and for full custody of her children, arguing that Sean's moral failings made him an unfit father. "It's the lying," she whispered, staring at her sleeping child. The sheer scale of it. How do you share a bed with someone, have children with them, and not know they're capable of this? I asked myself the same question every day. I replied, the shared pain creating a fragile bond between us. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. About a week before the FBI showed up, Jenny came over. She was agitated, not scared, but excited, like she was high on something. She told me, "Laura, you have to understand, what Sean and I have built is bigger than just money. It's a legacy. We're visionaries. Some people are just meant to do great things together, and others..." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. Others, like you and me, Mark, are just meant to watch from the sidelines. Hearing that was like a key turning in a lock, finally revealing the horrifying mechanism inside. For Jenny, it was never just about the money. It was about the narrative. She and Sean were the stars of their own epic movie. The brilliant, misunderstood visionaries changing the world. We, their spouses, were just a supporting cast, the mundane obstacles to their greatness. It was a level of delusion I couldn't even fathom. We parted ways that day with a grim, unspoken understanding. We were allies in a war we never signed up for. Two people left to clean up the radioactive fallout of someone else's bomb. A few months later, the criminal trials began. Faced with an avalanche of evidence, forged documents, a trail of phantom investments, hundreds of victim statements, Sean took a plea deal. He stood in court, looking small and ordinary in an ill-fitting suit, and confessed to everything. Wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He didn't look at Laura, who sat in the back of the courtroom, her face a mask of stone. Jenny, however, refused to see reason. She fired her court-appointed lawyer and hired a slick, expensive attorney who promised to paint her as another one of Sean's victims. But the evidence against her was too strong. The bank records, the emails she'd sent to recruits, her lavish lifestyle funded by the scheme. She took the stand and perjured herself, spinning a fantastical tale of being a manipulated innocent. The jury saw through it in minutes. She was convicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. The judge, citing her active and crucial role in perpetuating the fraud and her complete lack of remorse, sentenced her to 5 years in a federal correctional institution. I was in the courtroom that day. When the sentence was read, she turned and looked directly at me. There was no apology in her eyes, only a burning, defiant hatred. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no victory. Just a quiet, final click of a door closing forever. In the aftermath, I slowly began to rebuild. The Institute, after a thorough investigation, cleared me of any wrongdoing and welcomed me back. The world of the deep sea was a comforting constant. The creatures that didn't lie, cheat, or steal. They simply were. And then I met Sarah. She was a new geological oceanographer at the facility, a specialist in seabed tectonics. She had a calm, steady presence and a dry, intelligent wit. We were assigned to the same research vessel for a 3-week expedition, away from the ghosts of my past, surrounded by the vast, honest ocean. I found myself able to breathe again. I told her everything about Jenny, the scandal, the divorce. She listened, not with pity, but with a quiet understanding. "What a nightmare," she said simply. "I'm glad you're out." It was the most validating thing anyone had said to me. With Sarah, I started to build a new life, one based on transparency and mutual respect. It was quiet. It was real. A year after Jenny was sentenced, On a windswept beach at sunset, I asked Sarah to marry me. She said yes. We began planning a small, simple wedding, something that was the absolute antithesis of my first marriage. No frills, no show, just a celebration of our commitment with a handful of close friends. About a month before the wedding, I checked my P.O. box, a holdover from the divorce when I wanted to keep my address private. Among the bills and junk mail was a plain, white envelope with no return address. The postmark was from the town where the federal prison was located. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew who it was from. I took it home and left it on the kitchen counter for 2 days, staring at it like it was a live snake. Sarah finally picked it up. "This is from her, isn't it?" she asked, her voice calm. I nodded, unable to speak. "You don't have to open it, you know," she said. "You owe her nothing." "I know," I said, "but I need to know what she wants for my own closure." So I opened it. The letter was several pages long, written in Jenny's familiar, looping handwriting. It was a masterpiece of self-justification. She wrote about the boredom, the bad food, the unsavory people she was forced to associate with. She wrote about her regret, but it was a selfish regret. Regret for getting caught, for her ruined reputation, for the life she lost. There was not a single word of genuine remorse for the people she had defrauded, for Laura or for me. And then, on the last page, came the hook, the reason for the letter. "Mark, I know you must hate me. I don't blame you, but I need your help. You're the only one I can trust." Before everything fell apart, Sean told me about a safety net. He called it the Ethon Reserve. He said it was a separate account, offshore, with enough to start over. He was paranoid about the government. He never told me the details, but he said if anything ever happened to him, I should talk to his old college roommate, a guy named Leo Van Camp. He's a real estate developer in Belize. I think he's the key. Mark, if you can find out anything, if you can get to Leo, we could recover some of the money. We could make things right for the victims. Please, I'm begging you, come see me. We need to talk about this. I handed the letter to Sarah. She read it slowly, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she looked at me. "What are you going to do?" The pull was insidious. A chance to make things right. To be the hero. To prove I was better than the worm report guy she'd accused me of being. It was a perfectly crafted manipulation, preying on my sense of guilt and my lingering need for vindication. I took the letter back from Sarah. I walked over to the paper shredder I bought after the FBI visit, a symbol of my new, cautious life. I fed the pages through, one by one, the machine word, chewing her words into meaningless confetti. "Nothing," I said, turning back to Sarah. "I'm going to do absolutely nothing." It was the most powerful decision I had ever made. I was choosing my future, my peace, and my new marriage over the toxic chaos of my past. My wedding to Sarah was perfect. It was on a beach with just a dozen of our closest friends and colleagues. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Laura was there with her new boyfriend, a kind-eyed history teacher. She gave me a hug. "I'm happy for you, Mark," she said, and she meant it. As I stood there, holding Sarah's hands, listening to waves crash against the shore, I felt a sense of peace I thought I'd lost forever. I had finally swum out of the toxic current and found my way to safe, solid ground. 5 years have passed. The confetti from Jenny's letter has long since been recycled, and the memory of it has faded. Life is wonderfully normal. Sarah and I are happily married. We have a 3-year-old son, Noah, who is already obsessed with seashells and has my temperament and his mother's fierce intelligence. My career is better than ever. I'm leading my own research projects and have even been invited to speak at international conferences. The scandal is a distant, blurry memory, a ghost that no longer haunts me. I heard through the grapevine, the same one that once brought me so much pain, that Jenny was released on parole after serving 3.5 years. She moved to a different state to live with a cousin she barely knew. I have no idea what she's doing now, and I've made a conscious, sustained effort to keep it that way. She is a chapter one half firmly and finally closed. Laura, I'm thrilled to report, has not just survived, she has thrived. Her floral shop, Laura's Bloom, is a success. She's still with a history teacher, and they're talking about buying a house together. Her kids are happy and well-adjusted. We exchange Christmas cards every year. A photo of her family on one side, a photo of mine on the other. It's a small tradition that acknowledges the path we walked without letting it define us. As for Sean, he's still in prison. His appeals were denied. The legacy he and Jenny were so proud of building turned out to be a prison sentence, a lifetime of restitution debts, and a profound betrayal of everyone who ever trusted them. Sometimes, when I'm on the deck of a research vessel in the middle of the Pacific, miles from any land, I look out at the endless, horizon-less water. The deep sea is the most chaotic, unpredictable environment on Earth, yet operates on a set of immutable, natural laws. What Jenny and Sean created was an artificial chaos, a fragile, inverted pyramid of greed and lies, built in defiance of every natural law of decency and trust. It was never designed to last. I learned that the most important skill for a marine biologist isn't just navigating the unknown depths. It's knowing how to read the currents, to sense the storms before they break, and understand that the most dangerous predators aren't always the ones with the biggest teeth. Sometimes they're the ones who offer you the world, wrapped in a beautiful, convincing lie. I finally learned to trust my own compass, and it led me home,